Nolan Arenado was back at Busch Stadium on Thursday like he never even left. And that's because he never did. Cardinals with a big opening day win. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you, just back from Busch Stadium, downtown St. Louis, for all the festivities on opening day as the Cardinals get on the board first in the National League Central, the first team to win a game in the division, as the Brewers, Pirates, and Reds all lost on Thursday. The Cubs still playing as I'm recording now, but they've already got 2 games in the loss column from their series in Japan against the Dodgers like last week, and those games did count. So the Cardinals stand alone atop their perch in the NL Central. We'll see for how many days of this 6-month summer they're able to keep it, but all in all, a successful endeavor for the Cardinals on opening day, as they are 5-3 winners over the Minnesota Twins. Sonny Gray gets the win for the Cardinals, going 5 innings. Had a couple of spots of traffic to contend with and clean up, but I think considering the spring that he had and dealing with an illness recently and dealing with that velocity concern where his fastball wasn't quite featuring the same zip on it, all in all, for Sonny to get through 5, he struck out 6. He gave up just a couple of runs. Harrison Bader is one guy who absolutely did not get the vibe today at Busch Stadium. Tried on a couple of occasions to ruin it for Cardinals fans. The former Cardinal got a huge ovation, by the way. I think Harrison Bader was the only person pregame. Well, let me phrase it this way instead. The only person pregame who got a bigger ovation than Harrison Bader was Ozzie Smith. Nobody on the Cardinals, not one other person, was in Harrison Bader's territory when it comes to the ovation, because he was announced as part of the Twins lineup, and Cardinals fans apparently love them some Harrison Bader. We knew that already. But Ozzie Smith with the biggest cheer. You had some boos that were going on pregame. We maybe talk a little bit about that. We'll talk, of course, about the curtain calls. You had 2 of them today, Cardinals fans. Lars Nootbaar, home run, getting things going there for the Cardinals, not only with a leadoff single in the first, but again in the second inning, was able to get it really cooking for the Cardinals, get him out to that 3-0 lead. Nolan Arenado, the story of the game perhaps, with a home run late, which kind of helped keep everything at ease, especially as Harrison Bader doubled in that 9th inning. Ryan Helsley seemingly was cruising along there, and Harrison Bader almost found a way to muck it up a little bit for the Cardinals. But at the end of the day, it's a winner, and the Cardinals get it 5-3 over the Minnesota Twins. Let's talk about some of the standout, noticeable things from this game. And of course, on opening day, it's never just about the game. It's always about the festivities and the ceremonies and Lars Nootbaar getting in the wrong truck. Wait, what? Yeah, no, that happened. It was crazy pregame because you had a rain delay on opening day, about 90 minutes worth. I think it was officially an hour 38-minute delay as they got things going a little bit after 4:45 with the first pitch. But they kept all the ceremonies. Evidently, the Clydesdales had to be home at a certain time. They had a curfew because they ran right about the scheduled time, originally scheduled time, that is, of 2:30. And I guess that was that. Kind of a half-empty stadium at the time. It was still raining. People heard the music, "Here Comes the King," and so they peeked out from underneath the awnings to make sure they got to see the Clydesdales. But legitimately, I guess the answer is they had a curfew. I don't know. So ultimately, that was sort of the only way in which the rain really messed with things, other than the fact that I missed my bowling league because with the delay, there was no way I was going to make it there in time. We're going to break down all the angles that I can think of over the next 20-plus minutes, but let's start at the beginning. Pre-game, the festivities. John Mozeliak's last home opener as the Cardinals president of baseball operations. I actually play, and I posted the full video on YouTube on Thursday afternoon of John Mozeliak's pregame media availability in the Cardinal dugout, keeping us sheltered from the rain in there. And there's kind of a funny moment where he basically said, "I'm not really planning on giving any speeches today, no, but, if I did, here's what I might go with as my angle on such a speech." Because, of course, they did end up playing a video. Didn't mean to start there. They ended up playing a video, kind of like a video tribute to Mo, because it's his last year with the Cardinals. And I know everybody listening to this is going to say, "Stop talking about Mo, talk about the good stuff and the stuff that made me happy from the day." But I just want to play this 30-second clip of John Mozeliak before the game, because I keep telling people John Mozeliak is actually pretty funny. Please just listen to this 30 seconds of your time on John Mozeliak talking about not going to give a speech, but if you were to give a speech, this is what it would sound like. You got to admit, listen to this and tell me the guy's not a little bit funny.
I think so, but I don't have any intentions of giving a speech today. If so, you know what my message would be? Like, so when they boo me, I can say I'm leaving. That's your wish. Let's celebrate the moment. Let's not yell at me.
I didn't know that. You think that would work?
I don't know. I mean, I could think about it if you were on the other side. I would be appreciative if I didn't want the guy here. He's leaving.
How do you expect to be received?
My fingers are crossed. Not too bad.
Well, at the end of the day, Mo, it wasn't too bad, but you did get booed. The DeWitts were booed. Kind of a smattering, I would say. Love that word. Smattering of boos when Bill DeWitt Jr. and Bill DeWitt III were introduced. But then normally you'd have John Mozeliak introduced right alongside them, and then the Red Jackets come around, and then the players, and it's a whole to-do, as you know. Mo was actually saved for the end this time, and they did his tribute video, which, by the way, my opinion on that, of course they did a tribute video. Do you realize John Mozeliak has been helping to build the St. Louis Cardinals since almost before I was born? 1996, 97, he started with the Cardinals in the front office, worked his way up. So, yeah, has it been some lean years recently? Absolutely. Is he worthy of criticism for some of the guidance of the organization in that span? Absolutely. But I thought having a moment, tribute video at the beginning of opening day, last opening day, totally reasonable in my opinion. Now, granted, he did definitely get booed. But, I thought it was nice. The folks who booed eventually stopped booing. And there were a number of people who were cheering for John Mozeliak, and they lasted a little bit longer than the boos. But the boos were definitely there. So, anyway, that happened pregame. And then we got into the meat and potatoes of the game itself. And this was, frankly, a very well-played game by the St. Louis Cardinals. If they play 161 more just like it, not saying they'll win every game, but you had contributions from just about every part of the roster. You had key defensive plays that were made. The one that stands out, top of mind, was Victor Scott II tracking down a deep fly ball in right center field where he ran, I think John Denton had the StatCast numbers, like 95 feet he covered to be able to get to that ball. And I asked Vic after the game, I'm like, did you think about leaving your feet? Because when you travel 100 feet basically to track down a ball, usually you have to kind of be making that difficult decision toward the end of the play. He said, no, I mean, if it was lower, but he caught it pretty much like chest high, it seemed like. And he said, nope, on that one, didn't feel like he was going to need to dive, and obviously didn't. But it's almost kind of crazy. When a play like that is made, you almost feel as though you watched something special. And it was. To see him track that ball down, and lots of guys after the game discussing how it was a game-saving type of play. Another one that was made was Brendan Donovan's double play turn on a pitch I happened to see on the TV broadcast, 91 down the middle, and that I think Correa could have done a little bit more with that pitch than he did, but it was a sharp grounder where Donovan was able to range to his left and quickly flip back to the bag at second base, and then they turned the double play that really kind of changed the complexion of the game in another inning. But the Victor Scott play, without a doubt, they ended up scoring a run in that inning, too. The Twins did. I think that was the sixth inning. But it would have been much more difficult to navigate the Cardinals out of that inning with them maintaining the lead had Victor Scott not made the play that he made. So it's just kind of wild to think about the guy not leaving his feet. Doesn't have to dive for that, despite the fact that he ran basically 100 feet to track it down. And it almost was a little bit disorienting watching it, where you're going, well, how? Okay, I know that was really unbelievable, but he didn't even dive. Like, maybe no, it was just that's what speed do. That's what range do for your outfield. And Victor Scott II has it, and he's playing with confidence. It has been really, really interesting to see what he's brought to the table all spring, and certainly within the first game, you got a glimpse of that, at least on the defensive side of things, as he put that together. Something else that it was notable to me to think about from the pregame, as I'm kind of just, as you know, stream of consciousness when we're doing this show. And this won't be an audio clip that I'll play for the podcast, but I will read you the quote from Oliver Marmol pregame, because this occurred within his office and during the portion where the writers get a chance to ask Ollie some questions. And I was kind of asking along the lines of, isn't it weigh it out for us? Nobody expected Victor Scott to be making the push to make this team. Nobody expected Matthew Liberatore to be making the push he's made to be in your rotation to begin the season. And yet it's kind of a good problem to have. It's sort of the premise that I was trying to dig at with my question to Ollie. And for those who haven't seen it yet, Sports Hub STL, new writing venture, new podcast, all sorts of everything media venture. But I put together my first game story for them today because it was the first game of the year. And I have dialed up the format a little bit differently. I would love to get some feedback from people. Go to sportshubstl.com. Check out the game story from tonight titled, what do I call it? Still Standing, Nootbaar Arenado blasts homers in Cardinals opening day win. Within that, I kind of break it up in little sections, make it a little more digestible. Let me know. The feedback is great because this is kind of a new venture where I'm considering doing some different things with the stories that I write for Sports Hub. But the money quote, I'm going to have a money quote in every story, at least for the stories that I am there to cover the game, and somebody always says something that's notable. Well, I actually put this in from before the game where I had asked this question of Ollie Marmol about these guys earning spots and the squeeze that it might place on others for the at-bats that they were probably expecting, like a Nolan Gorman probably didn't expect to be on the bench today. What do you make of that? And he said, this is a quote I'm going to read you. Again, this was during the writers' chance to talk with Ollie Marmol, so out of respect for that process, I'm not going to play any audio from that from inside his office. But the quote goes, sure, it takes at-bats away from somebody, but that's the whole point of there not being a level above this one. This isn't just free opportunity. It's the damn big leagues. You earn it, you run with it, and if you never look back, good for you. It's at somebody's expense, but when they get an opportunity, they've got to run with it too. This was such an illuminating conversation, in my opinion, from before the game with Ollie Marmol, because we have talked so much, and he even kind of debriefed us as the media contingent, where he said, look, I know we're going to talk about this all year because there's going to be a game where somebody doesn't play or somebody gets pinch hit for or somebody gets taken out as a defensive replacement and could have taken another at bat. Like, he knows the drill and understands that this is going to be an ongoing conversation, especially when you add Victor Scott into the fold, where it's 10 guys for 9 spots. And that is before you even talk about the opportunities that Pages will get, which, by the way, Pages caught the 9th inning of Helsley today. I think he's going to be somebody that you see subbed in as a defensive replacement. And again, I love seeing that in game one because it tells me that the Cardinals are willing to use their full roster to the fullest extent, right? You can have Pages come in to catch the 9th inning because you're up by 2. Nobody should ever have to take another at-bat in a Redbird uniform in this game as long as you get a 1-2-3 ninth. You might as well have your best catcher out there. Well, what happens if it goes wrong and Pages gets hurt, or what happens if it goes to extra innings? Okay, your first baseman is the best emergency catcher in MLB history, Wilson Contreras, who had a nice catch, flipped the cap off like you would a catcher's mask, running out into the kind of no man's land down the right field line. Was a funny quote from Sonny Gray post game where, and I might even have to find it because it was just so very sunny the way that he talked about it. But Contreras was flying down the line trying to make a catch. It was the second inning, I believe it was, and the bases were loaded, 2 outs, and it was like he knew that this was the one that could get him out of the inning. It was also kind of his first real test as a full-time first baseman since this was the first game and really his first challenge. And so he was hyped up after he caught the ball. But let's grab that audio real quick from Sonny Gray talking about this play.
Oh, the pop fly down the right field, Harrison Bader on a 2-0. Yeah, yes.
What did you just make of Wilson's catch and just the play in general?
He hit it up, and I'm just, in my head, I'm just like, please catch it, please catch it, please catch it, please catch it. And then I saw it was going to be foul, and I was like, okay, but still please catch it. And then he caught it, and that was that.
So anyway, like I said, so very Sonny Gray in the way that he described that play from Wilson. He said, well, I noticed it was going foul. I was like, well, you still catch it. Like, just that is a guy who takes you through his thought process and truly in a stream of consciousness way. Maybe that's why I appreciate it so much, because that's what this podcast oftentimes post-game ends up being. We're doing okay here, I hope. This is kind of the first time jumping back in where you're really breaking down a game. And after an offseason of just doing a very different style of podcast, we're back into breaking down Cardinals games. You got to love it. But my whole point with talking about Contreras could theoretically sub in if push came to shove and you needed to, because they took Herrera out for Pages. But Pages got into the game, and we didn't see Luken Baker. Siani came into the game, I believe, as a pinch runner in that Herrera situation and then stayed in defensively. So, like, you have all of these sorts of things permeating and happening. And, yeah, there's going to be a conversation when it comes to the daily lineup about, like, who's getting squeezed out on a given day. But at the end of it all, the guys who are earning their opportunities are going to continue to get them more often than not, and that's all his quote about it's the damn big league. So that was something interesting that happened before the game, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. A guy like Lars Nootbaar is going to be in there every single day because his opportunity is before him, and to really be the table setter for this Cardinals offense, to be the engine. And it's not difficult to see what they like in Lars Nootbaar to be the leadoff man. Had a base hit, first inning, had a little bit of an adventurous moment where he was probably picked off between first and second, but it was very clear somebody somewhere on that coaching staff in that scouting report had a word in somewhere with this Cardinals group about what they were trying to do to Pablo Lopez. And it was not, they're going to be vague. They're not really going to talk about it, but it was alluded to post-game by Ollie Marmol. They were aggressive in the spots that they felt they needed to be aggressive. I don't really know what they thought they were seeing in Pablo Lopez, and maybe it was something to do with that front knee when it cocks in whatever way, and he's committing to home plate. Lars Nootbaar got bailed out by that on the first moment because Pablo Lopez didn't deliver the baseball to home plate, but when he turned around, he got the balk call, which I asked Newt about after the game. I said, were you relieved about the balk call? And he said, yes, yeah. Short answer, yes, because he was, a dead duck if that call didn't get made. I was a little bit worried, like, don't hurt yourself, like trying to do a quick stop or something halfway between first and second. But he was going, again, before the pitch was even thrown. Pitch never did get thrown. And he ends up at second base anyway, scores on a Donovan hit, so that was good to see Donovan in that number 3 spot. Could end up with a very interesting RBI type of season. I think it was somebody on Twitter, I wish I would be able to remember who it was, but somebody said, is he about to have the 1985 Tommy Herr season from the 3-hole? Tommy Herr in 1985, 8 home runs, 110 RBIs. So Donovan's more of a 10 to 14 home run type of guy, but could end up with a bunch of ribbies if he ends up kind of batting behind the Nootbaars and Contrerases, who tend to get on base a bunch. Now, granted, they're both capable of clearing the bases themselves, so we'll see if that ends up playing out. But good to see that from Brendan Donovan. But when it comes to the aggression, like the Cardinals did have an aggressive mindset, I felt, on the bases tonight. You had that moment with Nootbaar. You had Jordan Walker do basically the same thing a little bit later on against Pablo Lopez, where in his case, Lopez did not get called for a balk, was able to step off, but again, you're forcing the issue. He threw the ball into center field, so Walker ends up getting to second. They originally announced in the press box that the ruling on that was a caught stealing E1, so Walker was not credited with a successful stolen base, and I thought surely they're going to change that, because that was just give the guy a stolen base. It was going to be a bang-bang play at second, even if he had made a good throw. But no, ultimately it was caught stealing, even though he got there. That according to the box score I'm looking at, still never did get changed. But nevertheless, Ollie Marmol talked about, look, like, we're taking these aggressive chances. Are you just going to get thrown out once on one of those and say, it didn't work, and kind of tuck your tail between your legs? Or do you learn from the aggression and kind of figure out where you can push the envelope? That was the vibe I got from the Cardinals today. And there was another example with Ivan Herrera turning a single into a double. Not a very hard hit ball particularly, but ended up legging it out and having a good effective slide to the short side of the bag where the fielder wasn't able to make the tag on him. And he ends up going 2 for 3 with an RBI, reached base 3 times because he walked as well. Donnie, 2 hits. Arenado, 2 hits with the homer. Nootbaar, 2 for 4 with the homer, 2-run shot. And Jordan Walker was on base a couple of times too, 1 for 3, also reached via walk. Vic, Wynn, over for those guys. Contreras was over as well, but it's just day one. A lot of good stuff up and down the lineup that you saw. I mentioned the base running. From a pitching perspective, like, It wasn't the prettiest outing ever for Sonny Gray, but he said he felt confident and then maybe lost his confidence a little bit. I think he said for the second inning and then was really trying to refine it and made maybe one mistake where he said not the best execution of the pitch to Harrison Bader that he hit for the homer. 2-run shot that made it 4-2 at the time instead of 4-0. But other than that, I mean, 5 innings, couple of walks, 6 strikeouts, 4 hits allowed by Gray, scattered it for the most part. Bader got him, but that was about it. 77 pitches. Didn't send him back out for the 6th inning. I think that's a product of where they're at, coming off the spring that Sonny Gray had. He said it was the right move. He wasn't lobbying, I don't think, to go back into that game. He said maybe later on there'd be a situation where I would at 77 pitches, but he said it's going to take 26 guys to win this year, and they turned things over to the bullpen where he ended up having 5 relievers cover the final 4 innings. Leahy was charged with an earned run, recorded a couple of outs, but then the procession was John King, Roycroft, who looks like he really could be nasty for the Cardinals this year, Phil Maton getting into the action, and Helsley. That was kind of your 7, 8, 9 alignment after Leahy and King handled the 6th inning. And evidently it was the case that with a little bit of a hip issue, as it was described by Ollie Marmol, Ryan Fernandez was not available for the game tonight. And so he said they'll be having him ready for Saturday. But that kind of slid everybody up a notch in the bullpen, which included, Maton might be more of a 7th inning guy if Fernandez is available. And then JoJo's probably your 8th inning guy against a left-handed heavy portion of the opposing lineup. But it was a spot for righties today. So you go Maton in the 8th, Roycroft in the 7th. Normally he might be more of a 6/7th guy. But I bet you Roycroft ends up in later innings as the season goes along. I think this is a guy who could end up having a really solid year. I didn't end up doing like a full bold predictions article, but Roycroft would have been sneaky if I had. My bold prediction that I gave to Sports Hub STL, I've talked about it here, but Nootbaar is going to be an all-star. You're finally going to get the all-star season you've been waiting for from Nootbaar, and you can check the tape. You can check the record. I said that before his game today because it seems like a little bit easier to believe now. 2 for 4 with a home run, couple of RBIs, and 2 runs scored. But no, I just think he's going to have that type of year, and I did make the comment, if you really don't think that's bold enough for a bold prediction, give me Lars Nootbaar having more walks than strikeouts this year at the plate, which I think only Juan Soto did in baseball last year among like star players who played a bunch. So I think there's a realm in which Lars Nootbaar really unlocks something this year, and having him at the top of the Cardinals lineup is a pretty good place to be. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But let's get into the meat and potatoes a little bit here and hear from inside the clubhouse with Nolan Arenado, because this was a day for him that we didn't necessarily think was coming, right? Like, at a certain point in the offseason, it was all but a foregone conclusion that this guy was going to be on a different team playing baseball this afternoon instead of playing for the Cardinals at Busch. So the fact that he still ends up with the Cardinals, with St. Louis, in that opening day lineup and has the go-ahead, or pardon me, not the go-ahead, but the insurance homer that really kind of let everybody, and it's so strange because you're looking in my article for Sports of STL, I've got a section that I'm going to use this year called the fulcrum. And if you know what a fulcrum is, it's the fulcrum point. It's like the lever that hinges in one direction or the other, and it's sort of the game rested on this play, this moment. We can't really say the fulcrum of the game was Arenado's homer because it made it 5-3 and it was already 4-3, but I did in my article because I feel as though that was kind of the play that cemented it for the Cardinals. Even though technically Helsley could have blown it, it was like when you're in a 1-run game and the bullpen's already given up 1, and so you're like, yeah, there's not a lot of margin here. Getting that from Arenado really, I think, allowed everybody to kind of settle it in. And I forget which player said it afterward, but like it took the momentum back almost. And I don't even remember. It might have been Nato. I can't remember. Somebody said it. And it's kind of true. Even though technically they could have won without it, everybody was speaking to the importance of that homer by Arenado after the game. And I think that's totally, totally right. But let's go ahead and see if I can't track this down. Nolan Arenado talking in the Cardinals clubhouse after the game about the curtain call on the big home run that he hit in the 8th inning.
What was that emotion like for that curtain call?
Well, I was just happy I got to that guy's heater. He's a really good pitcher, and I was just trying to battle there. I had a short to the ball, and that's when I'm usually good, is when I'm pulling the ball in the air, and I was able to do it there. I wasn't expecting a curtain call. I was actually surprised I got it. So I don't think I got one last year, so it felt good to get one this year. So started off good.
Nolan Arenado after the game. Going to try to pick through some of the audio here as we go, talking about the situation and the fact that, it was a case where he didn't necessarily know that he was going to be here, right, throughout this offseason. And so I think that ended up with him having a little bit more emotion. It's not to say that he's not always playing with his heart on his sleeve, but it was very interesting. When he gave this curtain call, I'm sure you know by now, seeing it in the thumbnail image for the video here, he kind of leaned into it a little bit more and cupped his hand around his ear, like, let me hear it from you, Cardinals fans, and then kind of gestured to the heart and extended that out to the fans, to which he said, after the game, I asked him about that, and he said it was just, his way to say thank you to Cardinals fans for all the support, because he was obviously getting the curtain call, as he said, which was very meaningful to him. It's kind of like he very much is aware of these things, right? He goes, I don't think I got one last year. And before the game even, he was getting the ovation when he was announced. I mentioned that Ozzie was the loudest and Bader was too. Probably still on the podium there, though, was Nolan Arenado with the ovation that he got from Cardinals fans pregame, where they gave him some love, and it was maybe, he didn't know what to expect, but it ended up being pretty satisfying. And so that's maybe something that kind of jazzes you up as you then get into it a little bit more. And so that, I think, had an impact on Arenado today. Let me see if I can find some of this audio and continue hearing from the Cardinals third baseman after the ball game.
From intros, when they're introducing the lineup, they got loud for me, and it meant a lot. I'm just happy they gave something to cheer about. But yeah, it was awesome. I was pumped up today.
Were you wondering about what that was going to look like and sound like today at all?
Well, I wasn't expecting boos or anything. I just, I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. I honestly wasn't expecting it to be that loud. So I think it kind of hit me a little bit. I was pretty pumped up about it.
Did that kind of play into cupping the ear and kind of giving the heart to the fans during that curtain call?
I was just pumped up, and I was trying to get them pumped up. But, when I touched my heart, I was just basically saying thank you.
It's funny when he's on the field, he is just like an absolute animal. And he has like I said, the emotion is on his sleeve, the heart is on his sleeve, and the competitive nature comes out. And then, like, afterward, I asked him about, cupping the ear and kind of like, leaning in a little bit to it, like almost like a WWE kind of promo. And he gets just a little bit sheepish, where he's like, yeah, I kind of was just, I don't know, I was just trying to pump him up. Like, that is just so much fun. I don't know, as a Cardinal fan, how you can not love seeing that today, where, again, it's just clear the emotions took over for the guy. And again, has done and said all the right things since what transpired in the offseason, which you can trace back, was really through no fault of his own, right? Like, even the fact that it was the case that it became a topic wasn't something that he started. It was a product of ownership saying, hey, going to trim payroll, look at the contracts, who do we need to talk to? Sonny, Arenado, Wilson. Okay, Wilson and Sonny are like, well, you do whatever you want, but I'm not waiving the no trade. And Arenado's like, all right, I mean, if this is a direction, here are some places I'd like to go. And if you can get that done, great. Ended up getting it done with one of the teams that was on that list. And then it came not hypothetical anymore. This is real. Time to decide. And he's like, no, I'd rather, stick it out with the Cardinals if I'm not going to maybe get one of the more preferred destinations on my list. Absolutely nothing wrong with that in a business, right? Sucked for Mo because he had an objective that he wasn't able to meet because of it. But guess what? As I said all off season, after we kind of realized, okay, we got into spring, it looks like Arenado's going to be here. He makes your team better in 2025. Cardinals fans are smart. They know that. And they certainly know it after today. So let me know what your thoughts are on this big opening day win for the Cardinals. Everybody was like, you could tell they were excited to talk up that, hell, this was a really good style of play. This was Cardinals baseball. Sonny Gray said this is the kind of game that can embody, like, if you ask yourself, who are the St. Louis Cardinals? This game can embody who the Cardinals are going to be in 2025. But they were also very much self-aware. Like, okay, it's one game. There's 161 to play. And it's no guarantee that we sustain it if we kind of get act like we've done something here. So I just thought everybody had a really good mentality about the way it unfolded. And look, I said for my season prediction, for me, the Cardinals are in that 83-84 win range. And If you ask Twitter, which I did the polls and wrapped them up. I think the 80.5 is where we finally went under with the 50% voting over until that point. And so Cardinals fans think they're going to go about 80 and 82, at least the ones that voted on Twitter. I don't think it will be difficult if this team plays more baseball games like it did today to get the fan base to buy in, which they're already bought in, but to buy in on like having expectations still. It's okay. Everybody's kind of tentative right now with that word, expectations, and what those need to look like. But it was a fun day at the ballpark. Got to be real with you. I'm sure there are aspects of today that I have neglected to mention in this half an hour, but I do have to get rolling because we are taking a drive to a wedding in Texas this weekend. So I will not be in person covering Saturday or Sunday's game, but we'll be back, and we'll, if anything major happens, I'm bringing my computer, so I will, spit something at you when it comes to the podcast game. But I want your feedback, first of all, for today's podcast. Drop the comments below. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this type of Cardinals content. You're going to get it from me all season long, not only here, but Sports Hub STL's YouTube channel and sportshubstl.com, where I put together my first game story for the season. Please do go to the website, support me, support the endeavor, and check that out. My gosh, if you like Cardinals content, you should sign up for the membership here to continue supporting what we're doing. And we've also got a Discord, which I will link in the video description along with that membership link. So all kinds of good stuff coming your way. It is good to be back. It energized me to be back. And the Cardinals helped out by playing a really crisp game in front of a sold-out crowd at Busch. So appreciate you guys so much for listening. That one will do it for this edition of the show. And we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.